If you've been going around the good old internet looking for the right podcast to fulfill your New York Yankees needs, well, I'll be the first to deliver the good news to you. You have found it. Here on Yapping Yankees with me, your host, Mike Scudero, you and I will be discussing the latest news, takes, and talk throughout the entire Yankee universe. Oh, and there may be some ranting on my behalf. Yeah. Anyway, what do you say we get to it? Let's get to yapping! Well, hello there, my fellow Yankee fans, and welcome to episode 244 of the Yapping Yankees podcast. As always, I am your host, Mike Scudero, your friendly neighborhood Yankee yapper with the best yap in all the land, here on December 8th. 2024, yet another extra large order of the Yappuccino for you. Thank you, as always. Oh my gosh, guys. It's December. Oh my god. Where did 2024 go, dude? I mean, I know it's not over yet, but if you're saying this year didn't go fast, then I don't know what reality you're living in, but it ain't mine. That's all I know, because this breezed the hell by. But despite all that, I hope you've all managed to have a good last couple of weeks since the last time we spoke. The last time we did speak, it was just before Thanksgiving, so I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving holiday as well, and a safe one. I did. It was a very nice, relaxing weekend, and that seems to be the general consensus amongst everybody, thankfully. Usually people have their drama sometimes on holiday weekends, but everybody I've spoken to just about, they seem to have had a good one, so that's a good thing. But last couple of weeks since the last time we spoke, because we are amidst Yapping Yankees off-season format, where we're only doing an episode every other week, not much has happened at all in the last couple of weeks. So I really don't have that much to report to you or talk about as far as anything official. Like, a lot of it's just going to be speculation and predictions and anticipations. And my mom's boyfriend, Jack, actually used a good expression to describe it, like an episode like this where it's just basically all based on expectation, more or less. It's just kind of like spinning your wheels, and that's a good way to put it. It's not reporting on anything official, but just talking about what could be or what should be or whatever, like anything in that realm of conversation. And I can only do that for so long before I get exhausted, which leads me right into the main topic of discussion today, which I'm sure you can imagine what it is. And that's the whole deal about Juan Soto. You probably predicted that's probably mainly what we're going to discuss today, and it is, because that's what's on the front of everybody's mind, especially considering all the rumors out there that this is probably going to be wrapped, sealed, and delivered within the next 24 to 48 hours as we get ready for the winter meetings to begin tomorrow. Now, when we did speak last, I did say that when we talk next, which is obviously today, here on Sunday the 8th, that the winter meetings were basically going to be getting underway, and that's where we find ourselves. So a lot could happen this coming week, whether it be Soto or elsewhere. A couple of things have happened throughout Major League Baseball. A couple of things I'll mention quickly since we spoke 2 weeks ago. And other than a certain relief pitcher moving from the Yankees to the crosstown rival, we'll get to that in a little bit. Other than that, on an official level, nothing really has happened in Yankee land. So the discussion is really still, it's centered around Juan Soto. That's really what it's all about. I don't know what rumors you choose to believe. I don't know which reporters you choose to follow and trust in primarily. I have made it more than clear which ones I choose to, and those are none other than Jeff Passan and Jack Curry. Every once in a while, I will occasionally listen to what Andy Martino has to say of SNY, sometimes, but my main two are Jeff Passan, especially from the national standpoint, and even though he's solely a Yankee guy, he reflects a lot of the integrity and displays a lot of the integrity that Jeff Passan does as far as caring more about accuracy. Even though he's more focused on the Yankees, especially because he works in the S Network, Jack Curry is the second one. Because like I've said time and again, guys, the main key to getting through the offseason every year without falling for all the BS is really just looking closely and deciding who you can trust and which ones are the best ones to lock in on and really take their word for things. Sort through the riffraff. And for years now, I've learned that Jeff Passan and Jack Curry are what the reporting world should be, but they no longer represent. Because unfortunately, the vast majority of the reporting world now, and I'm not a reporter myself, so maybe I'm a little ignorant to it. But personally, what I've seen out of the reporting world from a fan's perspective, from an outside perspective, I guess you could say at least, is that the vast majority of them care more about being first or just ahead of everybody else in general than they care about being accurate. And because of this unfortunate truth, they have led a lot of people astray. They have broken hearts over it, people who chose to believe them, and maybe they came out with some sort of huge, quote-unquote, breaking news that they thought was accurate because maybe they were told it by somebody they trust. Whatever the reason may be, they've broken the trust of a great deal of the public, myself included majorly, because again, there are only two others I trust. There are only two people, Jeff Passan and Jack Curry, who, in my opinion, exemplify what reporters should do. You wait for the report so that it's accurate, you can confirm that it's accurate, and while I'm sure it's nice to be the first one to break the news, that shouldn't take priority over the former objective: accuracy, patience. The vast majority of reporters out there care about the latter. Being first, getting ahead of it, being able to say, oh, I broke this. I was the one with the news before anybody else. I have the trustworthy source. Everybody's got sources nowadays. Most of it's crap. And most of the reporters, in my opinion, since they have lost touch of what's truly important in the reporting world, have now become nothing more than a bunch of hacks. Any reporter you name, outside of Passan, anyone who tries to beat everyone else to the punch, they've gotten it wrong at least once. Yes, even people as big as Ken Rosenthal or John Heyman or any of the other analysts on any other network you want to mention. And speaking of Heyman, there's been a lot of talk about him the last few days. Anybody hear what happened between him and Keith McPherson on The Fan the other night? Oh my God. That was pretty wild. I mean, I think they both could have approached it differently. Like, I don't know. I do understand people saying that it's kind of odd that Keith had somebody on their show only to, like, insinuate that he takes cuts from Boris, even that if that is the truth, which I believe it is. But I can understand if I were in Heyman's shoes why that would at least, dig me or tick me off a little bit. But to act the way that John Heyman, a so-called professional journalist and professional reporter, also at age 63, how he acted at the end of that call, wow. Oh, my God. It's really funny. I almost envisioned it like it was like a 4-year-old kid who was just told by his parents that he can't have the toy that he wants so badly. And then the response from that child was just followed by a remarkable conniption for the ages. You go listen to it on your own time. I don't even want to get the clip for it for this show. I don't want that kind of nonsense on my show. But, yeah, it's just dumb. My God. And, Keith poked fun at him a little bit for the whole Aaron Judge mess a couple of years ago. And, the reporters have to be held accountable for that. And Heyman said, that he wishes people would move on and it was just a genuine mistake. And that's fine. People make mistakes. I understand that. But it's also a good case of just some good-natured ribbing. I mean, Keith was laughing and whatnot. I mean, we all laugh when people get things wrong. Sometimes we laugh at ourselves. Some people don't have the ability to do that because of perhaps their overinflated ego, or maybe they're just more sensitive than others. Regardless of the reason, the point of me even mentioning that was because Heyman is, the last couple of days, because of what just happened on The Fan, is at the epicenter of what is wrong with reporting. People being wrong about it, and sometimes not even really being able to show accountability for it. I mean, he kind of did, because he acknowledged he was wrong and he wishes people would move past it. But the thing is, Heyman really hasn't even changed his behavior since that happened. Not to say that he shouldn't ever get another thing wrong. People make mistakes. I get that. But we should be able to joke about it, number one. And number two, we'd be more willing to move on if the behavior has changed, but he's still doing his usual nonsense. People still view him as a Boris mouthpiece because we all know he has a good relationship with Scott Boras, one of the premier agents for Major League Baseball players in the entire sport. And people know that Boris has the tendency to possibly leak things to the media to try to generate interest in his clients, or maybe, add more intensity or discussion to negotiations that are already ongoing, regardless of what his intention is. These things tend to happen sometimes. They leak things to the media to spur reaction and discussion and everything, and maybe even put more pressure on a certain team to give more money. And there's a bunch of reasons, and people speculate that Jon Heyman may be one of these because they know the relationship that they have, the two of them. And people know that this has not changed. Jon hasn't even really denied having a relationship with Boris, so you know that it's there. And Heyman's still doing his usual thing where he goes on Twitter and tweets the same thing 85 times in one day, with each tweet just worded slightly differently than the others. So people assume that the same sort of crap is going on, and there's a chance because of this, at least this is my line of thinking, that Heyman and everybody else is still trying to beat each other to the punch. And as long as they're doing that, they care more about that than accurately reporting the news. They are more susceptible to being wrong, and therefore I can't trust them. And it just continues to bring about this feeling of fatigue and almost wanting all of this to be put to an end already. Like, I'm sitting here every single day, and despite the fact that this should be an exciting thing, and the fact that it's lasted so long, there's so much discussion, so much intensity, so much speculation, and so many ideas being thrown around all over the internet about this, there should be excitement about it. But between who has connections, who has a so-called source, and who thinks this is going to happen, who thinks that's going to happen, and using their nonsense reasoning for thinking that and forcing it down people's throats constantly, it makes the whole process exhausting. And I just find myself sitting there and saying, even amidst something that should be fun and one of the biggest moments in Yankees history, one of the biggest potential players, one of the most pivotal potential signings of one of the biggest players in years, in Juan Soto. All of this is happening, and yet I'm sitting there and just saying, please end. Like, please be put to an end already. I can't take this anymore. Not only because of the natural anxiety that comes along with thinking of whether or not Soto is going to be back here after everything that he bought to the Yankees in 2024, everything that he meant to the team, and everything he could mean going forward. There's that natural anxiety that's still there, and is part of the reason why I'm so anxious. But also between all the noise and all the nonsense, all the yap out there, I'm the yapper. I'm the yapper. But the entire internet lately, when it comes to this, everybody's got a connection, everybody's got an idea, everybody's got speculation. I'm going to shove it down your throats, everybody always says. And then you got the reporters out there, like everybody who's gotten stuff wrong. Heyman, Rosenthal, even John Morosi, a bunch of other MLB Network guys putting out all their crap. And yet the real reputable guys, like Jeff Passan and Jack Curry even, Jack Curry does his talking on Yankees Hot Stove because, well, he's a host on that show. He has to. And you also trust him more because he's more in-depth with the Yankees and closer to the people within the organization than maybe another just national name out there, because he works with the Yankees in the Yankees organization as an analyst on the Yes Network. But these guys most of the time are quiet while all the other noise is going on, because you want to know what all of that stuff is? That's just it. It's noise. So much of it is crap. And the only way to be able to sift through it and realize what is the riffraff and what could be real is by going through it for years and possibly even falling for one and learning from that. Do you know how much my heart sank to my big toe when Jon Heyman said Arson Judge appears headed to Giants? Yeah, it's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time, I promise you. But, oh my gosh. So, sometimes you gotta fall for it to learn from it, and then you probably just never trust that guy again, which is why I have my main gripe with Heyman. But, I mean, I have that same suspicion with everybody. How about that time when somebody claimed that Shohei Ohtani was legit on a flight to go negotiate amidst his free agency? Like, he was literally on the plane. But then it was revealed later on that that wasn't true at all, and he was just sitting at home. Like, it's crap like that that gives you pause and makes you a little suspicious and makes you feel like, well, maybe I should watch out for who I trust. So you have all that nonsense going on in the reporting world. A lot of people just shooting out crap. And you have the general anxiety of, is he going to be back? What do we do if he doesn't come back? And then you hear about, whether you choose to believe it or not, again, you hear about where the actual talks are headed and what could be the deal. And you're like, oh my God. Like, some people are saying right now that there's as much as 14, 15 years, which isn't as much of a surprise. I think we all knew it was going to go over 10 years in some way or another. But like 14, 15 years, and apparently the race, some people are saying the race is mainly down to the Yankees and the Mets right now, which is what I really anticipated it to ultimately come down to anyway. I said from the beginning that I think the only real two teams at the end of it are going to be the Yankees and the Mets. Yankees because he just finished being here, and the Yankees are going to be legitimate competitors in these negotiations because they want him back so badly, naturally. And the Mets because, well, Steve Cohen, and he still wouldn't even be leaving town. He'd still be in New York. Regardless of what else comes with it, all these reasons are why I felt like they would be the main two competitors. And Jack Curry went on Hot Stove, Yankees Hot Stove, on Monday and said that basically all the teams you've heard are pretty much still in it at that point. The Blue Jays, Red Sox, Dodgers, Yankees, Mets. And they still could be for all we know. I still believe that the only real competition, and the only ones that Soto may be considering, are the Yankees and the Mets. There are a lot of people in the Boston media saying that the Soto deal already happened weeks ago and we just haven't heard of it yet. It's just the stupid crap like that that drives you crazy and just has you rolling your eyes all day long. It's things like that that make you sit there and say what I said before when you just tell yourself, please God, end this crap. So between all that and hearing like 14, 15 years and like $700 to $750 million, like, bro, oh my God. Like, it's really getting to be, like, that much. Like, obviously the Yankees need him. And I'd rather an overpay than losing him. And people are mentioning opt-outs that might be in the contract anyway, and he might use those. And I'd be surprised if he didn't, honestly. So he might use those anyway, but... bro, at the same time, that's so much money. And you have a lot of people out there in social media land with people mentioning that simple fact, saying, oh, it's not your money, what do you care? Or, oh, you're not him, and that's just the way that things are right now. If you were in his position, then you would take every dollar you could, too. I mean, probably. But that doesn't mean that you can't admit that it's an absurd amount of money. Like, say what you want about Ohtani and his contract, and the fact that he didn't pitch in 2024, and who knows what his pitching future even is. But at least with Ohtani, you could, despite possibly not even being able to justify it because it's still a lot of money, 10 years, 700, despite the deferrals and everything. But at least you could somewhat justify something like that, saying like, all right, you're almost getting like two players in one because he pitches and hits. Soto, listen, I love Juan Soto. Please don't get me wrong. And again, like I said before, I want to reiterate, even if people who don't want to listen to me properly, because some people just choose to not even acknowledge plain English and just jump to conclusions and get all fired up about nothing. I'll say it again, just for those who have trouble understanding plain English. I would rather an overpay than losing him. I will never have sympathy for the Yankees or their financial situation. They are fine. They are fine. So I'd rather an overpay than losing him, especially when it comes to the on-field product and future of this team. There's a lot riding here. We all know what Soto means to the club. What he did this year, sent them to the World Series even with one swing. What he meant all throughout, we know. So I'd rather overpay and spend a stupid amount of money than lose him. I'm still sticking to that. It's not changing. But you could still say and acknowledge that it's like getting to a ridiculous point. It's getting ridiculous. I'm sorry. Like, at least again with Ohtani, you could say that you're getting two players in one. Again, even if he didn't pitch in 24. But now Juan Soto, I mean, he's just going to be hitting. Hitting better than almost anybody in the world, absolutely. I'm acknowledging that. It's fine. Has a better eye than just about anybody I've ever seen in my lifetime, at least. I know. Trust me. I've said it. I understand. But then you're getting a fielder who's probably going to be like average at best. Maybe a bit better than average, especially if he stays in right field. And yet he's going to be making more than Ohtani, probably with no deferrals, with more years, more overall money, the biggest contract anybody's ever seen, pretty much. It's reaching crazy levels. I don't know how else to say it other than just coming out and saying it in plain English. It's getting ridiculous. If it were 14, 15 years and 750, I know people are talking about, oh, what's your limit? When would you finally walk away if you're the Yankees? I mean, I'm still signing him at a 15 years, 750. Call me crazy. I don't know. Again, I don't feel bad for the Yankees. I never will. They're fine. The profit they make each year is probably more than we can even comprehend. But that doesn't mean you can't acknowledge that this is getting absurd. He's going to be making even more than Ohtani, a bunch more than Judge, and I understand that the value of money changes over time due to inflation, so contracts are naturally going to keep going up and up and up and up year after year. I get it. This doesn't have to become an economics class, but it's getting crazy. Like, even if you want to look at another contract that just happened the other day, Luis Severino is on the Athletics now. Wild, I know. But so he's not in the Mets anymore. But they even just signed him to a 3-year, $67 million deal. So if you do the math on that for AAV, 67 divided by 3, he's going to be making between $22 and $23 million a year on average. And maybe I'm still living in like 2014. Fine, whatever. But I mean, Severino, while he didn't do bad with the Mets, especially earlier on in the year, I mean, he had his great starts, he had his really bad starts. Towards the end, he definitely started to trail off. Maybe the amount of innings on his arm finally started to add up and get to him. Didn't have a bad year at the Mets, but it wasn't fantastic or terrific or spectacular either. And then you account for all the time that he missed with injuries before that in his time with the Yankees, all the time that he missed, and then in 2023, even at the times he was healthy, it was just an absolute nightmare with how he pitched. I mean, even someone like Luis Severino is raking in AAVs between 22 and 23 per. The Mets also just got Frankie Montas, which I believe is a big step down. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But regardless, even Frankie Montas' contract, 2 years, $34 million, so that's an AAV of 17. If you take 34 and divide it by 2, obviously $17 million per. I mean, how this guy has regressed since he was with the A's in 2022. I mean, it's quite spectacular between injury time missed, mid or bad pitching. 2021 was a solid year for him, made all of his starts, 3.37 ERA. 2020, you make what you will of that. I mean, whatever. Made all of his starts, but 5.60 ERA in those outings. But again, a screwed up season, I'll give him that. 2019, he was good. 2018, he missed quite a bit of time, 3.88 ERA, so 2017, he was still pretty new at that time, and he wasn't a starter yet, but it was really bad for him. 23 games, 7.03 ERA. We know what he did on the Yankees. In 2024, played with the Reds and the Brewers, obviously. Wasn't great for either team. Finished the year overall with an ERA of almost 5 at 4.84. This guy is not a good pitcher. He has not been in about 3 years. And he's getting $17 million per. He's climbing towards $20 million a year. This is the threshold now? That's what I'm saying. Not even just with the Juan Soto thing, but contracts in general. We're getting to a crazy place here. I get the value of money. I get inflation. I get it. It's getting crazy. Both can be true, guys. You can acknowledge that that's just where the economy's at. You could just acknowledge that this is where contracts are at. In baseball, this is the deal now, and it's only going to get worse and worse. But it doesn't mean it's not crazy. And just because it's not, quote-unquote, our money, or we're not, quote-unquote, in the Yankees organization, doesn't mean we can't comment on it. It's just an observation. Especially if you produce content like me, and you're just out here giving your thoughts. It's getting crazy. 14, 15 years, 750. I understand years down the line, when the value of money is affected even more as the years go on and inflation drives everything up even more naturally as time continues. Maybe the AAV of this contract so many years in the future, if not opted out on or whatnot, maybe that actually works in the Yankees' favor. Because you're locking in now for that many years going forward when things are definitely inevitably going to be so much different in like 12 years per se. When contracts will be even more ridiculous. So there's that to consider too. And again, I would rather an overpay than losing him. But my God, is it getting crazy. It's getting crazy. And it adds to the frustration of it all. I'm just like, all right, let's just get this out of the way and let's just see what the freaking guy signs for already. It's getting so wild, guys. And I'm just so tired of the rumors. Like, nobody really even knows anything, to be honest. I've even seen so many exchanges on Twitter. Like, there was one guy who put out a tweet earlier today saying, like, oh, if the Yankees mean that much to him and there's loyalty there and he really wants to win there and he thinks that that's the best chance, well, why isn't this already done? And a Met fan tweeted that. And to that I say, well, fair enough, but I could also flip that the other way onto you. For people who constantly say if it's truly all about the money, obviously Boras and Soto have said otherwise, to say it's really, he prioritizes winning more than anything, even the money, even though money is definitely still a factor, but he prioritizes winning. But there are people out there who are calling BS on that. Oh, it's all about the money. That's the way the world is now. That's the way the sport is. They're all businessmen, blah, 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 blah. So if it's all about money, and a lot of these same people saying that, oh, if it's all about loyalty and whatnot, then why isn't it done with the Yankees? Well, you're probably one of the ones saying, oh, it's all about the money, get over it, stop being so childish. So if it is all about the money, then why isn't it done with the Mets then either? Because so many other reports are out here claiming that Steve Cohen had basically said that he was prepared to outbid absolutely anybody by at least $50 million. Now, you can have whatever opinion you want on that. If it's arrogant, if it's a big alpha move and you respect the hell out of it, regardless of your opinion on that notion of outbidding absolutely any other opposing offer by $50 million or more, well, then clearly Steve Cohen is going to be outbidding absolutely everybody, and he's prepared to do it. So if it really is all about money, then why didn't he sign with the Mets 3 weeks ago? You want to know why he hasn't? It's the same reason why he hasn't signed with the Yankees or anybody else yet. It's quite possible that they just do not know yet. Or maybe a decision has been made, and it just hasn't, pen has not been put to paper yet. Either way, it's not done yet. And we can all have our preconceived notions and our opinions and our speculation. Why isn't this done? Why isn't that done? Obviously, it's not done yet. So why don't we all just shut up and wait to see how this plays out? Obviously, people are going to talk. That's what social media is designed for the exchange of ideas and thoughts and whatnot. I get that. I'm not that stupid. But, I mean, there are people out here having legitimate, like, wars and harsh discussions, getting personal and ugly about it across social media over speculation, things that aren't even official yet. Listen, if you have thoughts out there and you're out there putting it on social media, that's all they are, opinions or thoughts. I've even had people crapping on me on social media the last few days and the few times that I've tweeted about this. Oh, you're wrong, you're stupid, you're an idiot, go screw yourself, or something even more unpleasant than that. And at that point, I just back out. It's not worth my time or effort. It's social media. I couldn't care less. But like, you're getting that crazy about an opinion, bro. Like, get a grip on yourself. So again, all these things that I've described in this first somewhat half an hour of this show, that's why I just can't wait for this crap to end already. It's a really frustrating situation. I just want it to be done with. If it's done by tonight, great. I keep on refreshing Twitter right now to make sure that, if it does happen, that I break it right here on Yapping Yankees for you to listen to later once it's released. I keep on refreshing it like a mad person, like a madman. But, I mean, there's a chance it could happen tomorrow, in which case, there's a good chance that I'm back here next Sunday talking about it, because if this does happen, I'm going to have to come back with an episode next Sunday despite the bi-weekly off-season format. But regardless, I mean, right now, until the moment that pen is put to paper and it's officially reported to the world accurately that it's done, it's just your thoughts and your opinions. A couple of people out there have asked me, they're like, oh, Mike, what do you think about Soto? Whether it be my personal life or social media. Oh, Mike, what do you think about Soto? What do you think about this? Why are you so quiet? Like, I have been quiet Because I don't get that involved in all this. So much is just riffraff and noise and people not knowing how to act like adults over something that's not even official yet. I have no desire in getting involved in that. I'll talk about it when it comes to doing this show and giving my thoughts on it to you, my amazing listeners out there, and my amazing fans. But otherwise, I'm not going to sit here and get personal with a bunch of boneheads on social media who think they know what they're talking about. I don't claim to know more than anybody else when it comes to just speculating and this and that. Because you know what? We're not in the meetings. We're not. And neither are none of the reporters are in the meetings. They might just get tidbits of information, or at least they claim to, after said meetings are done. But unless you are directly involved in the meetings, unless you're like an executive in the organization, I have no reason to trust you if you're just putting out tidbits of information constantly and saying that you have a source of some kind. Because even if you're in the case of John Heyman, you have a relationship with one of the most premier agents in the world and Scott Boras in the world of baseball. Like, that information could be just being used to put pressure on one side over the other. Like, you don't know. You just don't know. And I'm not sitting here pretending to know. I'm the guy sitting here just tired of all this crap and wanting it to end already. That's literally what I am. And there's a good chance it ends within the next 24 hours or so. 24 hours plus. So, I don't know, guys. We'll see. Those are my thoughts on it. Obviously, regardless of the amount, I want Soto back. I think it could even have a positive effect on the Yankees with other players as well. Maybe if Soto comes back and they see how they're reinforcing themselves and getting a guy back who sent them to the World Series just a couple of months ago with one swing of the bat and meant what he meant to them throughout the entire season. Maybe that'll even encourage other players to fall in and really just truly bulk up this Yankees team the way it needs to be in order to finally take down a big machine like the Los Angeles Dodgers and finally win the championship they've been craving for a decade and a half that they got so frighteningly close to this year before pretending to play like a bunch of brainless buffoons. So maybe with Soto and the addition of a few others, that could finally swing in the Yankees' direction. So it could have a lot of positive aspects even after the fact. Bringing back Juan Soto is of utmost importance. We all know this. It's something that's been said 10 million times for the last month, and it is exhausting at this point. Please end soon. That's my main takeaway from this whole Soto situation. Please end. And have it end with him re-signing with the Yankees, please. And again, those 14, 15 years and 700 to 750 million pieces of news out there are just rumors. I mean, the final contract could be different. Who knows? Again, we just don't know. That's why I'm out here not putting stock into anything that anyone has to say. I'm just not. I'm waiting for the Passan tweet or the Jack Curry tweet to drop. Because again, these are guys who are reputable and care more about accuracy than speed or beating someone to the punch. 98, 99% of these guys in the industry, guys, I hate to say it, they're hacks. And they tweet BS. Just wait for Passan and Curry. That's my thing. I've even been busting balls on Twitter a lot lately because there'll be somebody like this guy Marlon Perella or something like that, or a bunch of, there's some Spanish reporters getting in on it as well, and just anybody else, even Heyman, like anybody. Morosi, Rosenthal, any of them. You name the guy. Like, I've been quote tweeting them of late. Like, they'll be like, oh, rumors are saying that it's the Yankees and the Mets, or rumors are saying the Red Sox are gaining steam and that these teams are willing to go over 700 or might have already, and, you know, whatever crap that they're putting out. And I'll do a quote tweet saying something along the lines of, oh, this is all great and all, but there's just one problem with this. Or I'll say, oh, the biggest takeaway from this, guys, is this person's name is not Jeff Passan or Jack Curry. That's just the deal. That's the deal. If it's not those two, and maybe every once in a blue moon, but even he's got plenty of crap wrong, Andy Martino on SNY, I'm not listening. I'm just not. And a lot of people are like very emotionally invested and allowing their feelings to be dictated by any and all pieces of quote-unquote news that they see on the timeline at any point. Even Randy Miller is another hack. I mean, all this discussion and all this talk, like all the combating with each other and nothing's lining up because nobody knows. Nobody knows. Like he's saying, oh, the Yankees might not be willing to go over even $550 million, which I find very hard to believe. And then now people are saying, oh, they're already over 700. Like, bro, you're all clowns. All of you, except for Passan and Curry. That's literally it. So exhausting, bro. It really, really is. So I'm just sitting here, and no matter what the reporter's been, like, people have been sending me stuff. They're like, oh, Mike, what do you think about this article? And what do you think about this person said? I said, I'm waiting to see what happens. And they think it's a boring answer, but that's just what I've been pretty much taught through trial and error to adopt. That's the mindset that I've chosen to have. If it's not Passan or Curry or anybody who just waits to confirm that it is 100% valid and true, if it's not one of those kind of guys, or Passan or Curry themselves, I don't care what it says. I'm not being swayed by it, and there's a good chance that it's not true. And even if it is ultimately, well, I'll be like, fine. Deal with it when it happens, and now I know who I can maybe trust a little bit more next time, and at least I'll know it's 100% true, so I don't have to lose sleep over something that might not even be true. So that's my takeaway, guys. If those numbers reported of late, last day or two, are true, it's getting wild. It really is. The numbers are just absurd. They really are. They're objectively absurd. But again, on the other hand, I don't have sympathy for the owners, especially if their names are like Steve Cohen or Hal Steinbrenner. I don't have sympathy for them. They'll pay what they have to, or what they're willing to pay or not pay, and we'll deal with that when the time comes. And selfishly, from a Yankee fan standpoint, of course, I would rather an overpay than losing him. A lot of people are saying, oh, you can allocate those sources elsewhere if you lose him and still be fine. I mean, I don't know, man. It's not easy to find a player like Juan Soto. They come once a generation, if that. Not even just with power or the ability to drive in runs, like the quality of his at-bats and all of that. It's in a league of its own. You don't see it come around often at all. And when it does, you have to do everything in your power to lock it in for your side. It's awfully tough to find a player like that and really sort of like equate the value of a player like that even in multiple different guys. Because what even is the chance if you try to replace him with like 3 others? What's the chance that all 3 of those other guys will even succeed? Regardless of the reason. Injury, pressure, regardless. Whatever you want to come up with. When you could just have Juan Soto in himself, as great as he is. And I also worry because there's been a case for a lot of guys. Like some people even say, oh, who will guarantee that he'll be the player that he is once he locks in the big money? Won't he not try as hard? I definitely think he was trying at least a little bit harder than he ever was in 2024 because he knew he was playing for the contract of his life. Hell, I even said that going in. I said, we'll probably get one of, if not the greatest Juan Soto season of his entire career. Especially because of what he's fighting for the 2024 offseason. And we did get one of, if not the greatest season of his entire career. That did end up going that way. But I have seen that go the other way as soon as people are paid. Sometimes it goes sour after that. Maybe they don't feel like they have to put in the same effort because they locked in the big bucks. I don't know what it is. This hasn't been the case with necessarily every single person of all time. Like Aaron Judge just had the postseason that he had, yeah, so absolutely, that's a tough argument to make. But his 2024 regular season was still fantastic. He got paid. So it's not like always it just turns into crap. But a lot of the time, it has, ultimately. And then maybe there's some instances of buyer remorse after that. But you still got to lock him in. You still have to. Because again, if you don't, who's to guarantee that all those other replacements that you get to come in and cover for him and make up for it, What are the chances they succeed? What are the chances you're even able to get them? Maybe they don't choose to come here if they have that choice, if they're free agents too. Maybe another team makes a trade with wherever the other player is at before you get to make a trade with that organization. Nothing's a guarantee. But if you can lock Juan Soto up, it's a guarantee that you have Juan Soto. At least until the event of maybe his first opt-out. If there are multiple opt-outs in this contract, we'll have to see. But you get the point I'm trying to make if you understand English. But you got to lock him in. And they still can't be done after that. There are still improvements that need to be made to this team once you're done with that. But he's got to be the biggest priority. The way that Hal Steinbrenner talks, I think he knows this. But we'll have to wait and see who ends up offering the most money. I don't know if it's ultimately going to be prioritizing winning or if it really is going to be all about money. Because really both sides could refute either of those. Like I said before, if people were saying, if it was all about the Yankees, if they were even remotely close to other offers, then he would have signed with us already. Okay, well, if it was all about money, then he would have signed with the Mets already. Because nobody's expecting anyone to outbid Steve Cohen. So that's why it's just not smart to... You can have respectful exchanges of ideas and respectful debates about it, but it's not worth going over the top about speculating what the guy's going to do, because we don't know. We just don't know. It could end up being all about the money. It could end up being a bit of loyalty. Let's say he signs with the Yankees for 14 years, $730. And the Mets offered him 14 years, $750. $730 to $750, obviously that's only a difference of $20 million, which, yes, to the average person is a crap ton of money, but I'm just saying in the grand scheme of an absurd contract like this, where you're already over $700 million freaking dollars. It's only $20 million, but it is still a discount. He chooses to come back to the Yankees. Obviously, there was a little bit of loyalty there. That's the point I'm trying to make. But if he signs with the Mets and both offer maybe 14 years, the Yankees maybe offer 14 years, $730, and the Mets offer, 14 years, $445 or $450, and he signs with the Mets, well, obviously, it was probably all about the money. Because he wasn't willing to take some sort of a discount, even if it was only about 10 to 20 million, and he chose to go with the Mets. Same thing with if he signs with the Yankees and the Yankees give him the most money, well, then it'll kind of be blurred a little bit. You don't know if there's loyalty there, if it was the money and they offer the most. Who knows? Point is, we don't know. Saying that for the 80th time today because it bears repeating. Because there are so many people out there running with their absurd ideas just to comfort themselves and convince themselves of their own truths when they don't have any information to back it up, any true, potentially accurate information, because they're not in on the meetings. I'm not in on the meetings. I don't know any better than you what Juan Soto is going to do, and I don't act like it. Neither should you. We'll wait to see what happens, and we'll deal with that reality when the time comes. And when all the information comes out. I don't know if we're going to have to rip the Yankees to shreds. I don't know if we're going to have to praise the Yankees. I don't know what we're going to do. We don't know the conditions of what will happen, what the ultimate numbers will be. So my advice to everybody is just sit back and wait for it to happen. Just wait. It's getting absurd. I know. I agree. But I still hope he comes back. You should probably feel the same way if you watched Yankees baseball in 2024 and saw what this guy provided for this team, despite how absurd the numbers may be. You should still rather an overpay than losing him. The Yankees are paying him at the end of the day, So, we'll see. Those are my ultimate Soto thoughts, guys. And I don't know if the announcement's going to come tonight or tomorrow, or maybe more into the winter meetings that are picking up steam tonight, but really will be in full throttle tomorrow. I don't know. We don't know when this will happen, but I'd be shocked if I'm not here next Sunday. That's all I know. Because I did say on the last episode when we were making our predictions of when and where Soto will be signing, I did say it'll be back with the Yankees. I still stick by that, despite any reports being made out there. And I did say that I think it will go no further than the winter meetings. Even if it takes place during the meetings, I still said it would be during or before. We're running out of time for the before, but I still think it doesn't go past this week. And if that proves to be true, then we will be back here next Sunday talking about Juan Soto, whether it be him coming back to the Yankees or not. So we'll see, guys. I see another report right now. Some people talking about showing John Heyman interviews on MLB Network right now because they're in the lobbies of the winter meetings and everything. Heyman's apparently saying that the Red Sox seem less confident than some of the other teams in the Soto sweepstakes. Yankees are apparently a little more confident than some of the other teams. Again, I don't really trust Heyman all that much. I don't care to hear that bit of information, even if it is positive for the Yankees. That's how you know that I mean what I say. I've predicted from the beginning that I think he will be back with the Yankees, and I still pray he is. But I'm not believing that report because it's also to guard a little bit against heartbreak. I'm not going to lie. That plays a part in it too, obviously. But also just from an objective standpoint, I'm not believing anything I see until pen has been put to paper and it has been accurately reported on by reputable people like Jeff Passan and Jack Curry. That's the deal. Yankees Hot Stove should be on tomorrow night because it is a Monday night thing usually, so I'm looking forward to that and seeing if Jack Curry can provide any further insight on anything he may or may not have heard, being from the Yankees' perspective, because I do trust him again. So, we'll see, guys. That's it. But media continues with this hijinks. They will right through to the end of this thing. People will continue with their hijinks, with their over-the-top obsession and rudeness over this whole thing, despite the fact that they're not even talking about true fact and just their thoughts and opinions on the matter. And Soto will keep negotiating. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying also, some of them have gotten mad at Soto even, saying, oh my God, why can't he just make his decision? If he loved the Yankees so much, he would be back. Like, no, bro, he's a free agent. He's testing his market. He's seeing what's out there. He's doing what a free agent could and should do. Let him take his time. He'll make his decision ultimately, and we're all going to have to live with it despite our pure euphoria over it or our devastation over it. Regardless, he'll make his decision. And he's just taking advantage and doing his thing of how free agency and the current state of affairs of financials in baseball are. The owners opened up Pandora's box long ago to start with these absurd contracts, and they're only going to get more absurd over the years, like I've said. So that's what happens there. So that's the whole Soto deal, guys. I definitely spent more than enough time on it. Honestly, on to news, guys. Not much has happened at all these last couple of weeks in Yankees land besides just the continued mind-numbing Juan Soto discussions. The only thing that did happen was a couple of days ago. A departure took place with a former Yankee player now, I'm glad to say. It's pretty funny. A couple of nights ago, it was announced. I was literally in my basement doing a workout during this, and I literally had to stop my workout for about 15 minutes to actually comprehend what I had read and to stop laughing because I was on Twitter, happened to refresh my feed, and I saw, before I even saw the context of it, or that a contract was signed, or what the contents of the contract even were, I see Clay Holmes in a Mets uniform.
Holy crap!
Yeah. Clay Holmes is a New York Met. And that's not even the kicker. The kicker is that according to reports, now we don't know if this is ultimately going to be true, or maybe some other sources have verified it since and I just haven't seen it, but they're apparently going to use him as a starter.
Huh?
Like, this guy who would give you a more powerful heart attack than just about anybody with getting as little as 3 outs. You're going to count on him to get anywhere from like 12 to 18 outs. Like, for the Mets' sake, I really hope this isn't true. Now, if he is out in the bullpen and he is like a setup man to Edwin Diaz, per se, like, fine, whatever. Even in that case, I would like to warn Met fans, especially the ones with nice heads of hair, like, prepare for your hair to start thinning in 2025. That's all I'm going to tell you. But especially as a starter, oh my God. Oh my God. Now, for all I know, he can go to Queens and be fantastic. That's probably what will happen with my luck and me, ribbing him right now and everything. It's probably what's going to happen. I'm fine with it. Well, I'm really not, but I'm fine with it. And especially when he faces the Yankees, he'll probably just have perfect innings from now until the end of time. Probably. And when Clay Holmes is on, does he have phenomenal stuff? Yes, he does. But when he is not, and when he is doing what he does best, cutting off oxygen to people's brains and almost causing a number of strokes throughout the entire fan base, that happens quite a bit, as we all know all too well in this Yankees fan base. And I just think it's pretty funny that the Mets fan base is going to have to experience that now. Like, why would you sign him? Like, I know he's got good stuff when he's on, but like, my God, guys, you see how many games he blew? I'll give Clay this. Again, when he's on, his stuff is untouchable. The sinker's killer, the breaking ball is good, but how often is he giving people heart attacks? My God. He was great in the playoffs, yeah, except for that outing or two against Cleveland. Yeah, other than that, he was fantastic. I'll give him that. But jeez, guys, what the Yankees went through with this guy. I don't even care if his ERA, and that's usually a stat that I very much go by, his ERA with the Yankees and last year wasn't bad at all. But the quality of his outings, like I said before with Juan Soto, with the quality of his gameplay, the quality of his at-bats. Same thing with Clay. I mean, my God, it's enough to drive even any sophisticated adult almost to the asylum. So I just think it's very funny that he happened to go to the crosstown rival of all opposing teams, and I just wish my Met fan friends out there a lot of luck. And I do hope that you have lower deductibles on your medical insurance, because you're going to be going to the doctor quite a bit with elevated blood pressure, possibly even legitimate medical issues. I'm only kidding, obviously. But my God, do I wish you luck in dealing with this guy. Like I said before, he'll probably be great for all I know. That's probably what's going to happen. And you know what? Fine. I'm okay with that. If he does great with the Mets, fine. All I know is that I couldn't take him in a Yankee uniform anymore. And so with that being said, whether it's the Mets or any of the other 28 teams throughout Major League Baseball, as long as he is not with the Yankees anymore, that's what I care about. He can do whatever he wants elsewhere. Godspeed. God bless. Thanks for everything when you were actually good, whenever that was. Good luck. Goodbye. Like, that's literally it. That's all I can really tell you. So, I think it's hilarious. The fact that I didn't even see any news about it pop up in my notifications or anything, and the only thing that I saw immediately upon going on Twitter was just him in a Mets uniform and nothing else. I'm sorry, maybe it was a different find for you when you first got on, but I thought it was hilarious. I just couldn't stop laughing. Could not stop laughing. So, Clay Holmes, best of luck in Queens. We'll see you a couple of times a year. That's it. He is the Mets' problem now. Especially if he's in the starting rotation. My God. Imagine going from Minaya to Severino. Nothing's happened with Minaya yet, so we could still possibly go back. We don't know. But as of right now, while Minaya is still not officially back with the Mets or anybody else as of right now, how you go from Minaya and Severino, even though Severino was the risk that he was going into 24, but going from Minaya and Sevy to Montas, and if he's a part of the starting rotation, Clay Holmes. Oh, my God. Talk about a generational step down. Oh, God. We'll see what happens in 25. I don't know, but wow. So there was really that, and that's really all that there is to talk about the Yankees as far as anything officially happening with them or anybody else in the entire ball club since the last time we spoke a couple of weeks ago before Thanksgiving. That's really it. Anything else that there is to talk about throughout baseball was just elsewhere. Like you had Willie Adames yesterday signing with San Francisco for 7 years. There were some Yankee fans who were looking at him a bit for a potential infield option. Now that it really looks like I said a couple of weeks ago, that Glaber's probably not coming back. I predicted that he wouldn't. And despite what he provided in that last month, like I've said, I'm okay with that. And since he wasn't even given a qualifying offer, which I did admit, he was so fantastic in the last month of the regular season and into the postseason as well that I think he did even earn himself at least a qualifying offer. But since the Yankees didn't give him one, That was basically all I needed to know to say that, like I said a couple of weeks ago, he's probably not going to be back. And the industry has all but confirmed he's probably not going to be back. And he himself has taken off basically anything there is regarding the Yankees on all of his social media. So I'm just going by what I see, guys, pretty much. And Jack Curry basically confirmed that on Hot Stove also when he was talking last week. When he was talking about the Yankees' offseason plans do not include pursuing Gleyber or even Anthony Rizzo, both of which I predicted, completely expected. Most people did. And I think it's the right move. Like I said, if it's anything other than just a qualifying offer or a one-year thing in general for Gleyber Torres, I thank him for everything he did in the end and wish him the best of luck and send him off. And Rizzo, as much as I love him personally and as much as he meant to the Yankees in any other aspect beyond just offensively or even defensively at times this year, post-concussion, how dreadful it has been since that happened, I still have my personal love for Anthony Rizzo as a veteran presence on this team and what he meant to the team on an overall basis pre-concussion. I don't forget that easily, along with the fact that I just love him as a player and even as a person in general, even going back to his Chicago days. I love him when he was on the Cubs too. So, despite all these things, when it comes to what's best for the team, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with both of those. I'm okay with moving Jazz Chisholm back to second base, which is his primary natural position, and finding a potential other alternative for third base. Or even keeping Jazz at third if you want to keep on working with him all offseason to make sure that that's a safe thing to do. I know I've crapped on the Yankees a lot for playing guys out of their natural position a lot of the time. But I don't know. They got Jazz. He was as brutal as he was in the playoffs for the vast majority of the time, except for the beginning of the World Series when he started to get on and steal bases a lot. But I'd be willing to give him another shot, and if you'd rather keep him at third and look for other potential second base options or put this Caleb Durbin kid there, then fine. And that's what Jack also said they might do, that Caleb Durbin is likely to be seen on the Yankees. For those who don't know who Caleb Durbin is, I know I really didn't even mention him on the episode a couple of weeks ago, despite him being talked about a little bit even then. He's a 24-year-old infielder in the Yankees minor league system. In February, he'll be 25. So he's in his mid-20s. He's been down there for quite a bit. Since 2019, he's accumulated a good amount of experience down there. He's been down there since he's 19. And he did see a lot of time in AAA this past season. Had 82 games, had 10 home runs, drove in 60 RBIs, batted .287 with an on-base percentage of .396. So he got on base a good amount, that's for sure. A .471 slugging amounting to an .867 OPS. You're talking about solid numbers here for this kid. He's even playing in the Arizona Fall League in 24 games. He's got 5 home runs, 21 RBIs, .312 average, .427 on base, .548 slugging amounting to a .976 OPS, nearing 1,000. Kid walks a lot. I mean, he's got 17 walks in 24 games in the Arizona Fall League right now. Puts bat to ball. He's a solid infielder. A lot of people are talking about playing him at second base if they were to bring him up, and I'm in agreement with that. I do think that would be the right move. And giving him a chance. Obviously, they have a variety of other names down in the minor leagues that people are thinking of as some other potential options, like Yorbit Vivas, Oswald Peraza, despite how the Yankees have handled him. And then some other people are anticipating other names like Roderick Arias or George Lombard Jr., guys who aren't going to be ready for at least another couple more years. So there are other names that people are throwing around, but a lot of people are considering Durbin for taking up second base possibly, and then you keep Jazz at third, or you could try putting Jazz at second and looking elsewhere for a third baseman. Don't forget, you also have Oswaldo Cabrera around, and you could put him just about anywhere if you care about using him quite a bit. You also have first base to attend to, and hopefully you'll work with Jason Dominguez on playing left field. This is assuming that Soto comes back and still has right field manned. If he doesn't, then you could just shift Aaron Judge back to right field, I guess, and just give Jason center field. But if this is still going to be the case, then work in left field with Jason, man. Get him out there and have him playing the games that Alex Verdugo stole from him a lot of the time in 2024. But there's still plenty of time to talk about the rest of the team. And we will talk about that a little bit more in the social media segment coming up anyway. But that was just some insight that Jack Curry shared on the Hot Stove, on Yankees Hot Stove last week. And I just wanted to bring some of those things up as confirmations of things we might have already predicted, or as things to possibly look forward to, like Caleb Durbin possibly manning second base in 2025, and no plans being in there for Rizzo and or Glaber. So you had that, and you had Clay Holmes to the Mets. You had Willy Adames to San Francisco. And then you also had, just one last little point before moving on to social media, you had Blake Snell going to the Dodgers for 5 years. Now, a lot of people were obviously in an uproar about this because how much friggin' better can the Dodgers get? Especially if you're talking about their rotation being at full health. And this is including Shohei Ohtani if he returns to pitching in 2025 like some people are expecting him to. You have Snell, you have Yamamoto, you have Tyler Glasnow who will be back, you have Ohtani. Like even just that four, even those three in Yamamoto, Snell, and Glasnow, like yeah, there are injury risks there, but I mean, like we always talk about in this game, almost everybody's an injury risk. But still, like, bro, it's cracked out. And you have other arms after that, like Gonsolin and Dustin May, and oh my god. Holy crap, bro. Like, it's so many arms. And then plus there was additional outrage because like with Ohtani's contract, there was some money deferred for this. So, I don't know, listen. I mean, if the Dodgers are allowed to do it, then I don't see why other organizations like the Yankees and the Mets or any other big market team out there like the Red Sox perhaps, I don't know why the rest of them just don't do it. I mean, clearly it's allowed. It's in the CBA. It's allowed to do. So, I mean, whatever, right? I'm not really 100% sure about what benefits it provides when it comes to California's taxes or anything because I'm not a California resident for one thing, and also I'm not an accountant. So that I'm not as well versed in, I'll admit. I'll feign some ignorance to that. But, I mean, listen, if the only take that I have is at some point, I guess, that money's going to have to be given to them at one point or another. And the whole value of money thing and inflation discussion comes in again because maybe it won't be as severe having to pay it then because, there'll be much more expensive contracts and a lot more money being thrown around at that point with contracts in general. So maybe they're like avoiding that a bit in that sense, especially with the part about taxes. But it's allowed to be done, right? They're doing it. So if they want that changed or amended, well, they can talk about that at the next CBA in a couple of years, I guess. I do think there should be somewhat of a cap to it because they are avoiding paying like right now, per se. But also, I think there needs to be more pressure, even more so on the owners. And I've talked about this before, many times before, especially during the last CBA. I think there needs to be even more so than talking about capping certain things. I also think there needs to be some pressure put on the owners for a salary floor. I think there should be a certain amount of money that you have to spend in order to field an at least competent product for the people who are investing in your team and your organization. So I think there's a lot to be talked about. I don't think one can happen without the other. If you're going to talk about capping certain things or putting an end to certain things, well, you also got to pressure billionaires to spend at least some freaking money to field a competent product. So I think it's a big discussion to be had. And again, there are certain things here that I might not be as well versed in as opposed to some other people. But my only real stance on it is, like, yeah, the deferring money thing is a bit annoying, and it's, constantly seeing it over and over again, and it's becoming sort of a habit for them. Yeah, it's annoying to see, and it might give them a bit more of an edge in signing some of these big names, but also at the same time, I mean, it's allowed. And if it's allowed, then why don't the other organizations do it? Because I will acknowledge that a lot of the people complaining out there, if their team was doing it in order to sign these big names and make their team better, I'm sure they wouldn't have a problem with it then. I'm just taking it from an objective standpoint because that's what I always try to do. I don't want to be subjective because you lose respect for your opinions if you're like that because you don't look at things through an objective lens. Because, I mean, who's going to listen to you or take you seriously? You're like, oh, it's not okay if they do it, but it's okay if I do it. Like, no, it's allowed, so... like they can do it too. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So it's annoying, yeah, but if other people want to get in on it, then get in on it because it's allowed. So yeah, Blake Snell making the Dodgers even more freaking cracked out. It's annoying as hell, especially because that team should really be the one in the scopes of the Yankees and everybody else looking to be the best and be on the top right now. Not only because they're the reigning champions as of this point, but because they just keep getting better and better. Well, the other teams need to step up to the plate too, pun intended. and think about how it is they're going to end up beating the Dodgers somehow. God, I'm such a dork. But, yeah, listen, that's really it. It's annoying to see, but maybe you should get in on it too while it's allowed, especially if it means you don't have to pay that money necessarily right now, but maybe later down the road when, the value of money's affected, or maybe you make certain profits off revenue and it's easier for you to pay back down the road. I mean, who knows? Maybe start looking into doing it. Or just stand your ground, I guess, and just hope it stops happening at some point. I don't really know. It's up to the organizations. But if it helps in stopping the Dodgers and putting yourself into a position where you can compete with them more and possibly even beat them, well, maybe it's a method you should look into doing yourself. So that's really all the news, guys. Soto, and a couple of things here and there, like Clay Holmes, Blake Snell, Willie Adames, and that's really it. There is just this one last thing, and I really didn't want to bring it up at all today. I wish I could just go to the social media segment and just move on with my life, but it was mentioned, so I kind of feel somewhat of an obligation to bring it up because it's general Major League Baseball news, and if something like this did happen, it would obviously affect the Yankees because of that. But reports came out a little while ago, maybe a week or two ago, saying that Rob Manfred was apparently throwing this idea around. Something called the Golden Bat Rule. And basically what this rule is that one time per game, so probably be in the bottom of the ninth, if anything, that this rule would be used constantly. But one time a game, a team would be able to sort of screw with the lineup. Let's say, like, in the bottom of the ninth, you have the Yankees are down 3-2 against maybe the Oakland A's, and Mason Miller's on the mound closing out the game. Let's say that's the scenario, just for scenario's sake. And Aaron Judge led off the inning, and he struck out against Miller. But you want to see maybe if he could get a better look at him the second time after having already seen him once. Maybe he has a better shot at him another time. You can tweak the lineup where that you could send Aaron Judge up for a second time and hit again. Or you could do this with anybody else in the lineup. Let's say the inning led off with Judge batting third, but Soto saw the eighth inning and ended off the inning there. You could pull Soto up to the plate if you want. So you could basically take any hitter in your lineup at any point, one time per game, and hit them in any given situation. Or even in the sixth inning, if you're down by 2 runs and the bases are loaded and there's a hitter coming up that you don't like. And again, for the sake of this discussion, let's just suspend disbelief. Let's say Jose Trevino happened to be starting the game at catcher last year, and you don't like his odds to do well in this spot. There's 2 outs and bases loaded, crucial part of the game, maybe the 6th or 7th inning. Really good chance to just at least tie the game here, maybe even take the lead for the final 2 innings in the home stretch here. Trevino comes up to the plate. But you'd rather Juan Soto or Aaron Judge. Well, that's no problem. You could just yank them into that spot and have them try again in that specific spot and potentially alter the entire game unfairly. So you could basically manipulate the lineup and once in a game, take your best hitter or the one whose chance you like the most in a specific spot and just place them in that particular moment in the game whenever you want. Now, you have people in the media like Michael Kay, and I don't dislike Michael Kay. I'm not his biggest fan either, but I don't dislike him. I like the guy. I mean, hey, he follows me on Twitter. That's insanely cool of him to do. He doesn't have to do that, but he does. So I don't want to insult the guy. I have no reason to insult him. I don't even know him personally. So I'd be foolish to do that. I'm not classless. But he had a weird opinion about it on the air the other day. Thankfully, most people view this for what it is. Like, Michael went and blamed people for, like, getting on Manfred for at least trying to come up with sort of a creative way to spark interest in the game. And that we're all being foolish and unfair and, like, even stupid or dumb for getting on him for at least coming up with the idea. I mean, I can confidently say that this is probably the weirdest opinion I have ever heard on the air. with some of the most oddly misplaced anger I've ever heard, too. Because, I mean, you would think that Rob Manfred was a personal family member of his that was mortally insulted to within an inch of his life with how angry he got over this. He was pissed. Like, no, dude, it's an objectively absurd proposal. And people are completely allowed to, and probably should, dislike it. Because, I mean, what are we doing here? Are we Major League Baseball, or are you T-ball? Like, what is... I don't care if it's just a proposal and he's just trying to get people to talk. Dude, it's an insult to even think of something this ridiculous. Like, this would make the extra inning Ghost Runners rule seem genius. It would be like the greatest change of all time in comparison. Like, are you actually kidding me? Taking a hitter whenever you want at a certain point in a game and just placing him in there even if it's not his turn in the lineup? Like, what's the point of a lineup then? Just throw the lineup out. Oh, but Mike, it can only happen one time in a game, so it really doesn't affect the lineup. It's still happening at all. You're completely changing the lineup by just allowing, even if it's just one time a game, someone to hit whenever they want. And again, fortunately, basically everybody out there sees this for what it is. Absolutely incomprehensibly absurd. I'm sure there are a couple of people out there who think, oh, maybe it's a little interesting. You know, this is quite the thought experiment, if I do say so myself. There are always those people out there. I'm sure they're there. But the vast majority, I mean, thankfully, and people rightfully so, got on Michael Kay. And I understand Michael wasn't saying that it was a good idea, but he got on people for saying that, oh, you shouldn't be getting on Manfred for at least trying to generate some sort of interest in the game. That's not how you generate interest. I'll give Manfred this. There are a couple things that he's done that I thought would turn out to be a disaster that actually turned out pretty good. The time clock being one of them, and I have admitted that. I thought the time clock, there would be a lot of adjusting here. There'd be a lot of catastrophic moments, especially in big times in games, like towards the end and maybe in the bottom of the ninth, where someone loses track of time and they're, God forbid, called out on strike three if their team's down by 1 run with 2 outs, the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth, and it would be some completely foolish rule that puts an end to what could have been a phenomenal finish to a game. Like, that really didn't come to fruition nearly as much as I thought it would, and didn't have that negative impact nearly as much as I thought it would, if at all. And as a matter of fact, it has gotten some people back into baseball because the games aren't going as long. And I do think that it moves things along nicely, personally. I don't think it's bad, per se. So, there's a thing or two out there, and I also don't mind the bigger bases, and so little things like that. And the timing thing being the main one. I was wrong about that. It turned out much better than I thought it would. And again, there are certain other little things that he's done, like the bigger bases, that I don't really care much about. It's fine. It's whatever. But I mean, you're talking about, this would be the single most embarrassing change, even if there's no chance of it coming true and saying, oh, you're overreacting, Mike. There's no chance it'll actually happen. Fine. But even the remote thought of it, like, it gets me thinking. It would definitely, in my opinion, be the single worst rule change in the history of professional sports. I'm going even beyond just baseball here. I don't even want to think about this or even really spend much more time on it. It really shouldn't have taken up any time on this show as it is. I want to pretend like it didn't even happen, and I'm praying it never does, and it just stays in the idea phase, because if it actually does come true, it might be a little too much for me to handle as a baseball fan. That's all I'll say at this point in time. That's all I'll say. I'll leave it at that. I don't know if I'll be able to completely drop the game, because that's a very difficult thing for me to even imagine, but it would do a number on me. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it at that, and that's it. If you have a brain in your head, you know there's no word for it. Anyway, social media segment. Let's wrap this show up, and I'm actually going to deviate the discussion a little bit, as I hinted earlier on in the show, away from Soto a little bit, which I'm sure will be welcomed amongst some of you here in this last 10 minutes or so, with this open-ended question. The question is, while everybody's talking about Soto, and rightfully so, whether or not they do get him, what are some other potential moves you'd also like to see the Yankees make this winter? Well, like I've said, I definitely think first base needs to be addressed. There are another number of names being in this. There's some people even talking about them moving Aaron Judge to first base eventually. I don't see that happening anytime soon, really, if at all. I don't really take those discussions very seriously, as of yet, at least. Some people are talking about Cody Bellinger. Definitely an appealing option. I don't think it's bad. He has definitely had quite a bit of looks at first base, especially these last couple of years, so it's not like he has no experience there at all. He's played a few hundred innings there in the last couple of years combined, so it's not a matter of lack of experience. And his bat is fine, but I don't know, just something has me a bit uneasy about Cody Bellinger. Whether it be the time that he misses here and there, or the fact that before 2023 he wasn't good for a solid 5 years. Because in 2018, 2019, he was otherworldly, especially in 19. Then 20, 21, 22, just falls off the face of the earth. So it took 4 years for him to resurface. 23 was solid again. 24 was a good year. It was solid. So I don't think it'd be a bad move. I'd be excited to get him. Don't get me wrong there. And like Rizzo, he'd be a lefty and a much better hitting one at that at this stage of his career, if you compare the two. Probably have better defense even at this point, since Rizzo's defense even began to fall off a bit post-concussion. But I don't know, there's also just that little aspect about Cody Bellinger that has me uneasy because of his past. I don't hold that too much against him because I try to pay attention to the here and now, but it makes me feel a little bit uneasy, and the fact that he still misses time here and there, I don't know. But I'd be okay with getting him. I'd definitely be okay with it, especially if it's a reasonable number. You also have to address second base if Glaber's not coming back, and this also inevitably has third base involved, because if you want to take Jazz and take him from third and put him back to second in his natural position, you got to think of doing something with third base, or you could have Caleb Durbin play second base, call him up from the minors, and leave Jazz at third. That's a discussion we were having before, too. Anthony Volpe's obviously still going to be at short. Catcher, you're probably going to see Austin Wells there much more often than not when it comes to starting catchers. You're probably still sticking with that. Outfield, again, obviously a lot is predicated on what happens with Soto. If Soto's not back, then you move Aaron Judge back to right field, I guess. Put Jason in center field. And then you see what you do for left field, I suppose. We can leave that discussion for what happens with Soto, because a lot of it is predicated on that. But if he does come back, then you keep Soto in right. You leave Judge in center, I guess. And then you have Jason working in left field and hopefully improving defensively there, because you know you'll get good numbers out of him offensively over the course of an entire season. It would be for the first time we ever see him over the course of an entire year, because 2023 got called up late, and in 2024 it was very sporadic and not very frequent. So 25 would be the first experience with something like that, and you hope that the defense improves in left and they work with him a lot in the event of that. Or you could just, even though it's a lot of real estate to cover, make you a little nervous, you can work with Aaron Judge in left field, maybe put him to left. I don't know, the guy's already played center for a couple of years now and covered a lot of real estate out there. I know left field's an entirely different ball game, especially at Yankee Stadium, but you could work with the guy. Anything's possible, and you give Jason his natural position in center field so that he's comfortable. It's up to everyone individually at this point as to what they think will happen, as to what will actually happen. It's obviously up to the Yankees. But the outfield is majorly predicated on Soto, so I don't want to dive into those waters all too much. You'll have guys like Trent Grisham on the bench as fourth outfielder options as well. And then what to do with pitching? I mean, you just lost Clay Holmes for the bullpen, which I'm not sad about at all, really. So you also have the Yankees talking about potentially bringing Tommy Kahnle back. Apparently they're in talks. I'd be fine with him coming back for another year. But we'll see if they end up signing more bullpen arms. I personally very much like where the bullpen was at in the later part of last year, and a lot of those arms I'd be very content with them returning if they're not already under contract. And the starting rotation, well, right now you still got Cole, you got Rodon, you got Luis Gil, you got Clark Schmidt, you got Nestor Cortez. Then you got your outer arms like Marcus Stroman, or even a guy who the Yankees acquired earlier on in the year and never got to see because he's always hurt and is not even that great of a pitcher, but who knows what he would do here, and JT Brubaker. And a lot of people are saying they could afford to bolster up the starting rotation even more. Maybe getting a Max Fried, or maybe even a Garrett Crochet, both of whom I would love for this team. So there's a lot of things being thrown around. I do think that a starting rotation arm wouldn't hurt. There's still a bit of injury risk in this rotation, and I don't know, Carlos Rodon's still the wild card that he is in a way, so I definitely think it could afford to be a bit bolstered up. But also, yeah, I mean, the biggest priority is Soto, obviously, but even outside of that, yeah, another starting rotation arm, I suppose. If you want to sign another bat, like a Bellinger to take care of first base, or even down at first base, also another possibility, Pete Alonso, that might be appealing to some people. And that's definitely at least a little appealing for me, even though certain aspects of Pete have gone down. Like, so he doesn't hit for as high of average as some people would want, didn't hit as many home runs as people expected in 2024. But, I mean, his defense has definitely improved the more he's been in the league, and there's always the possibility that his home run numbers will go back up. I mean, because he's a very powerful guy. So, and plus he would be coming from the Mets, which would be very, very funny. So there's the appeal of that, and I have quite a bit of appeal on that, but I mean, we'll see. So, possibilities like that. Some people are throwing Alex Bregman around for third base, possibly, if you were to move Jazz back to second base for his natural position. And I'm not really a fan of that, especially with some of the money that's being thrown around potentially for Alex Bregman, who's on the wrong side of 30 with some declining stats, and obviously the history with the Yankees, or against them rather. I'm not about it. So just a lot of names being thrown around. Even for the starting rotation, another big name I forgot to mention, Corbin Burns. That's another big one being thrown around as a big potential free agent starting pitching signing. So a lot of names being thrown around. I'd like for at least one starting rotation addition. And if they were to get Alonso or Bellinger to take care of first base, everything else, as long as they get Soto back, I think everything else will take care of itself. You have internal options for the Yankees, and I think it'll be okay. If they get another bullpen arm on top of that, that's always another area where you could get a lot of like no-name guys and really hit a jackpot with them like the Yankees do so often out in the bullpen. So I'm not as worried about that because the bullpen always ends up turning out to be completely fine. It has its rough patches throughout the year, inevitably. It's a long season, but ultimately it ends up being fine. So I never worry as much about the bullpen as I do about the offense or the defense or the starting pitching. My worry never really reaches as high of heights for the bullpen usually. But that's my perspective. If they could, get Juan Soto back, it'll be a huge contract, fine, whatever. I mean, I'm sure the Yankees will be fine with paying it off with all the money they make. But if you could get one starting pitcher, whether it's Fried, Crochet, Burns, I mean, any of those three would be fine with me, more than fine. And then you get, to solve first base, you get a Bellinger or Alonso. I mean, it might be asking for a bit too much for the Yankees with that huge Soto contract. That's fine, whatever. But in an ideal world, that's what I would want. Let's see what you guys said a bit here. Go through a few replies. First up is @7Trivia saying Burns, Hill, second base, bullpen help. All right, so definitely some Burns interest, some interest in Hill as well. Second base, it's going to be interesting because it depends on what they choose to do with Jazz, or if they plan on using Caleb Durbin. If they use Durbin, I think he's going to be the second baseman, but it's possible that they choose to move Jazz back there. Who knows? And bullpen help, yeah, I understand that, but again, on my list of worries, that's usually not as high up as some of the others. And plus, you get a good starting rotation, it'll put less pressure on the bullpen as well. @Laura_Icemont, my buddy Laura says, more bullpen pitchers, one starting pitcher, and someone for first base. I do like the idea of trading for Cody Bellinger. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mentioned Bellinger. I think that would be solid. There are those couple of things about him that worry me, but there are definitely worst first basemen that you can have, that's for sure. And yeah, by the way, that would have to be a trade and not a signing for Cody Bellinger because he had a player option available for his contract going into 2025 with the Cubs, and he chose to pick it up. So it would have to be a trade with Chicago. But yeah, I mean, it depends on what they would want. I'm not sure who they would want if the Yankees could swing that one. They definitely do have some appealing minor leaguers to pull that off, possibly. That's a trade proposal that we could talk about down the line, if anything. But yeah, it's an intriguing idea for them. I definitely would like them to bolster up the starting rotation as well, so I agree. @Frank Oliveri says, trade for Bellinger. If Soto doesn't come back, then trade for Lowe, sign Fried. Look to trade Cortez, Grisham, Trevino, and Stroman to clear money and a couple of bullpen arms. Well, who would you trade them for? Because, again, that's important. Because when you're talking about trading lower-level guys in your team, well, who or what would it be for and who would participate in that? So, Easier said than done, clear up money. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what they do with Stroman because they didn't pitch him really at all towards the latter part of the year and into the postseason there, and rightfully so. But he still has those couple of years left. It's interesting. He's making decent money. I got to get a refresher course on what his contract is. Right, okay, it was the 2-year contract with the vesting option for a 3rd year. So yeah, for that 2nd year of the contract, it'd be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, if you could clear some money off, I mean, it'd help even more with the payroll, yeah. At Evan Wetzel 11, Evan says, if they landed these 3, despite Soto, we should at least try and understand that they're working to stay where they are. Sometimes it's better to land the balance in 3 All-Stars than in only 1 Hall of Fame player. Walker, Burns, and Fried. All right, so Walker would definitely be your first base option, and then Burns and Fried to bolster the rotation. Yeah, the rotation would look really good. You'd have a pretty good... I don't think Christian Walker is godlike like some people play him up to be, but he's definitely a solid player. That would be your first base fix, and it would bolster up the rotation nicely. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a nice thought, but again... What are the chances that they all work out? What are the chances you could even swing all those 3, or that they'll play up to expectations and replace someone like a guaranteed Juan Soto if you retain him? That's the only thing. It's just a risk, man. I don't know. They'd definitely be trying, but it'd just be such a tough thing. It'd be such a tough thing to do. Rebecca at Peace Now for Life says, in addition to Soto, I'd like either Bellinger or Christian Walker for first base and Max Fried for another starter. Of course, these moves and Soto. Yeah, the and Soto's the key, isn't it? Got to agree there. Those would be solid. I mean, Bellinger or Walker, I'd take either of those. That'd be fine. And Max Fried to bolster the starting rotation, that's fine with me. At Crusaders BBNY says we need another legit starting pitcher, also another solid infielder. Jazz can play third base or second base, depending on who's available, but everyone is forgetting about DJ. He's still under contract, and I believe he'll be at first base or third base on opening day, whether we like it or not. No. No. I don't know what other way to say it. It's the same word in multiple different languages, my friend. No. I don't care if he is under contract. If the Yankees have to cut him and eat the money, or just have him sit there and pay him for doing nothing, regardless, he had better not be anywhere near any starting lineup unless this team is next to Hindenburg disaster scenario. Absolutely not. You're talking about a guy who has not been the same in almost a half a decade straight. Absolutely not. Had certain glimpses of positivity, like in late 2023, but no. Just no, absolutely not. Can't be an option. And if it is, the seriousness of the organization has to be questioned, especially if this is on top of them potentially losing Soto. That's just a remarkable no. Easiest no of my life, actually. At Rebirth Chaos 09, my buddy James says starting pitching. Need to address the infield and left field. Trade either Stroman or Clark. Need a first baseman. Well, if you could trade Stroman, then you do that. Don't trade Clark. I think Clark's got a good future ahead of him. If he could have a whole year under his belt without getting hurt, I think you'll see a lot of great potential there. I'd like for him to be a part of the rotation going forward. And the infield, well, yeah, a lot of that we're going to have to wait and see. First base is a big deal, and whether or not they decide to have Durbin there. Jack Curry saying that it's very likely that he could be there is a big indicator for me. So we'll see. That would mean Jazz probably stays at third. And you have to figure out who to get for first. And left field, it's... Again, the entire outfield depends on what happens with Soto, but if Soto's back, you got to work with Jason to try to get him to play out there. And if not, then you work with Judge to have him be a left fielder and give Jason center, which is where his primary position is. Figure something out. It depends on what happens with Soto, though. Next, we have at Fundamentals NYY says first base, second base, starting pitching, and bullpen. Well, yeah, a lot of that's predicated on, we'll see what happens with first base, and then second base, they decide with Durbin, then Jazz is probably going to be at third, or if Jazz is at second, we've been over all this. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, if they want to add to the bullpen, fine, but I think those first 3 are bigger priorities, if I'm being honest. At C Pizza IA says, first base, rotation depth, closer, infield depth, Left field if no Soto. Yeah, if no Soto, like we said, yeah, that's going to be a discussion we have to pick up elsewhere. But, yeah. I mean, first base is definitely the biggest one outside of Soto, if you ask me, because you don't really have a first baseman that's competent or really fully worth it as of right now for the entire season, or at least for the vast majority of the season. Spencer at Musician DMD says, forgive me for not precisely answering your question. It's all right, Spencer. By the way, I hope you're doing well, my friend. I still think about you a lot. As great a talent as Soto is, and I'll be very happy if he returned, I could also be at peace if he departed. The timing just isn't right for the Yankees to commit to a large, prolonged contract. I mean, I don't know. I can't be at peace with that personally, my friend. I just have to disagree with that respectfully. I can't be at peace if he departs. If now's not the time to participate in a large and prolonged contract, then when is? I'm sure there'll be another premier player out there that garners big money, in possibly even in the near future, not even in just the future in general. I'm sure there will be, but if not now with what this guy meant to this team in 2024 and what he could mean going forward, then when, honestly? Contracts are only going to get more and more absurd, unfortunately, as time continues to go on. So if not now, then when? So that personally, I can't agree with that. I cannot. Sorry. I know you're acknowledging how great a talent he is, and as you'd be very happy if he's back. But the other part, I can't get on that level. I'm sorry, dude. Just personally, I can't. At BBQ Baseball 62 says they need a corner infield bat, a starter, and bullpen help. Yeah, bolstering the starting rotation would be nice. Yep. Corner infield. A lot of that depends on what happens with second base. If they actually want to use Durbin, then Jazz is going to have third most likely. And then there's first base too. So, all right, couple more. At Shoegirl68 says, I want a pitcher. Starting rotation or bullpen? But yeah, more pitching would be nice. Can never have too much pitching. They always say that, right? All right, let's do the usual final two, as always, to wrap this episode up. First up is my girlfriend at Vic Salimo. And Vic says, how about just anyone who is fundamentally sound and consistent so that what happened in the World Series has less a chance of happening again? Amen to that. Yeah, because like I've said also, I think I said this 2 weeks ago too. I mean, me and Victoria feel exactly the same way about this. You can make all the improvements you want. And I know that what happened in the World Series was just an anomaly and never seen before on that kind of a scale, on that kind of a stage, just collectively. But you can make all the improvements you want, but if you got a team that's going to screw the pooch that way, it's just not going to matter at the end of the day. I respect that answer. I respect it. Good job, babe. Last but certainly not least is my mom, Julia Gina Scudero. And my mom says, well, I'm hoping Soto is a class act and stays here with the Yankees. What's the difference between 600 and 700 million? Either way, you couldn't spend all of it in a lifetime, even in generations to come. It's just gluttony at that point. We shall see. Let's hope. However, I would hope also before Judge loses his amazing ability and starts to age out, that the team can ultimately succeed. I feel we need another great starting pitcher, another closer, and more men that can actually hit a baseball. And I'd love a new catcher, too. Get Chopin Steinbrenner. What's the difference between 6 and 700 million? Well, I definitely agree from an ordinary person perspective. How do you spend that money even in a lifetime and possibly even in multiple generations that it's gluttony? Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, but at the end of the day, what's the difference between 600 and 700 million? $100 million. That's the difference. So that's that. But I do agree with the general sentiment. I do. I mean, from just a humanic standpoint. But yeah, I mean, Judge aging out one day. I mean, yeah, a large percentage of the things that went wrong in the playoffs ultimately, a lot of people set their sights in on him right at the epicenter of a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, you would hope that before he ages out that they win a title. I personally have said, and I think I've reiterated it here on this show as well, that the year that I'm looking at, and I've said this probably since, I don't know, 2020, 2021, that the year that I'm looking at is 2026, that if they haven't won by then the chances of doing so are just going to significantly drop, at least with this group of guys. So, I don't know. we'll see. If 2026 comes and goes and they haven't won, it's not going to look good with this group. So I agree there. I mean, clock is ticking, and having someone like Soto at his age will help you get that much closer and better, which is why this is a lot of it's predicated around him. But again, this discussion is based off of just accept for him, and hopefully assuming that it'll be on top of getting him back. Another great starting pitcher would be nice, bolstering up the rotation even more. And men that can hit a baseball, yeah, wouldn't that be lovely? Well, unfortunately for you, as far as catching mom, I don't think you're going to be seeing a new catcher. I think they're going to give Austin Wells as much opportunity as he needs to just keep on growing as a player, as a catcher, and just in general. Because he is still on the newer side to this league, definitely. He's got a lot of work to do. And I think they're going to give him plenty of opportunities to do said work and continue to improve going forward because he can be a really good catcher. We've seen those moments where that potential shines as bright as the sun. But then you saw the last month of the season and the playoffs, and that's the alternative. So anything to even that out a little bit, I guess would be best case scenario. But that's just about it for the social media segment, guys. And therefore, episode 244 today as well. Thank you so much for participating in the social media segment if you did. And obviously, just thank you in general, even if you're just sitting here listening, especially for this long baseball offseason episode being over an hour and a half. I appreciate it more than you know, trust me. I have been refreshing Twitter the entire time I've been recording this show. There has been no update on Twitter except for everybody just being beyond nervous. Because there are a lot of people out there right now, and the time right now, at the time I'm taping at the end of the show here, is just after 9 o'clock. There are a lot of people out there right now expecting this signing to happen at some point tonight and at latest tomorrow. So, I mean, it could happen the second I hit stop recording on this right now. We don't really know. But a lot of people are saying, and again, I don't listen to the vast majority of people. I really don't. If it's not Jeff or Jack, I'm probably not going to believe it. But lots of tweets out there tonight saying that he's going to reach his decision tonight. A lot of combating reports as to who he may be leaning towards. And listen to it at your leisure. That's all. But just be careful what you trust and try not to get yourself too crazy. I am definitely nervous. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not. I think a decent chunk, the vast majority of the Yankees' future hinges on what happens with this guy alone. And we'll have to see. There's going to be a lot of bitterness from some fan bases regardless of the outcome. And one fan base is going to be really happy. We'll see, guys. Regardless, though, I would be shocked if, again, I'm not here with you again next Sunday because, again, my one sort of stipulation to the Yapping Yankees bi-weekly off-season format here is if something major happens with the Yankees and I come back the following Sunday to talk all about it. It happened a couple of times last off-season, the first time I did this off-season format, and it might just happen again this week for Juan Soto. We'll see, but I do think I'm sticking to my prediction during or before the winter meetings. Now it's basically during, late Sunday night heading into Monday. I'm sticking to it. I think it gets done at some point this week, but possibly even tonight or tomorrow on Monday. Stay close to your notifications, guys. That's my best advice. And again, I'll be shocked if we're not here next week talking about it. Whether we be happy or sad, we shall see. But for now, guys, if you haven't already, please remember to follow me on all social medias. My Facebook fan page is at Mike Scudero NY. Twitter is at Mike Scudero. And my Instagram is Mike Scuds97. Subscribe to Yapping Yankees on all 4 platforms it is available on. If you have not already, that's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Like, subscribe, comment wherever you may be listening. Show your love, spread the word like you all always do such a great job at doing, my friends. And if you have the time, if you have missed any Yapping Yankees episodes at any point, well, do not fret. Every single episode of Yapping Yankees going all the way back to episode 1 about 5.5 years ago, give or take. All the way up to today's episode 244. All of those episodes can be heard on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Or if you're just a YouTube listener, that's okay too, but just be sure that the episodes that can be found on there are episodes 34 up to today's episode 244. And again, That's for my YouTube listeners. But once again, I thank you 3,000 for listening to me yap today, my good friends. As always, I have been your host, Mike Scudero, and we shall yap again in possibly a week, possibly 2 weeks, depends on Soto, honestly, guys. But regardless of whether it's next Sunday or 2 Sundays from now, on December 22nd or December 15th, we'll have to wait and see. That episode will be episode number 245 of Yapping Yankees. And stay tuned to my social medias, because obviously if Soto happens, we'll be back next Sunday and I'll officially announce it. So stay glued to your notifications to see what happens with Soto and this podcast over the course of the next couple of weeks, depending on what happens. But until then, guys, regardless of the outcome, always remember to hang in there, be patient, please stay safe, look out for your loved ones, go ahead and kick life's ass this week. And Soto, please come back. Yankees, do everything in your power to not absolutely shatter our hearts into billions of pieces once again. And let's just wait and see what happens as the winter meetings are getting underway for this week. Hopes, prayers, every possible body part that could be crossed, fingers, toes, anything you could think of. Godspeed to us all. Until next week or the week after, guys, we'll see. Take care, and let's go Yanks.